On the night of August 24th, Ukrainian drones carried out a daring strike at the very heart of Russia's war machine, targeting strategic facilities in the port of Ust-Luga and the Saint Petersburg area. Long-range drones of Ukraine's security service and special operations forces slipped unnoticed deep into enemy territory and unleashed devastation on one of the Kremlin's main energy hubs. Russian propaganda hastily boasted of allegedly shooting down dozens of drones, claiming that as many as 57 were destroyed in a single evening. But reality was far harsher. Key facilities went up in flames, exposing the helplessness of Russia's air defenses. The attack became Ukraine's true act of retribution for the crimes of the aggressor, proving that even Russia's supposedly untouchable rear regions are no longer safe. Ukrainian warriors demonstrated that every strike on Ukrainian soil will be avenged, and the enemy received a sharp, just punishment. The most painful blow was delivered to the Ust-Luga port on the Baltic Sea, one of Russia's most important energy nodes. Through this maritime terminal, Moscow had for years exported oil and gas, relying on its so-called shadow fleet of tankers to bypass sanctions. Ukrainian drones hit directly at the heart of the facility, the gas processing complex of Novatek, Russia's largest producer of liquefied natural gas. According to confirmed reports from the General Staff, the strike destroyed a cryogenic gas fractionation unit, triggering a massive fire. Video evidence showed a powerful explosion followed by huge flames engulfing industrial tanks, with thick black smoke rising over the port and illuminating the night sky across the Leningrad region. With one precise hit, Ukraine knocked out a critical element of the production chain. OSINT analysts noted that without this unit, the entire gas chemical complex is paralyzed and unable to operate. The destroyed facility had an annual capacity of nearly 6.9 million tons of raw material, making the scale of the damage catastrophic for Russia. The strike set off secondary detonations and additional explosions across the compound, turning what had been a symbol of Russian gas pride into a blazing ruin. The consequences for the Russian occupiers are both severe and far-reaching. The Ust-Luga fire forced a shutdown of the gas processing terminal, immediately crippling Russia's export potential. This port had been loading roughly 650,000 barrels of oil daily, nearly 20% of Russia's entire seaborne crude exports. That flow is now essentially cut off. The last tankers managed to leave before the explosions, but shipments have since been halted. Every day of downtime costs Moscow tens of millions of dollars in lost revenue. Experts estimate that the destroyed unit alone was worth between $1 and $3 billion, and repairs could take months to a year. Worse still for Russia, most spare parts will need to be imported, but the suppliers are under sanctions, making a quick recovery nearly impossible. The Ust-Luga strike is not just a local act of sabotage, it is a strategic blow against the entire Russian energy chain. Before the attack, the complex brought in an estimated $5 to $7 billion annually, about 2% of Russia's oil and gas foreign currency revenues. Now Putin's regime risks losing this income that had been funding his war machine. While Western nations were slow to impose full embargoes on Russian energy, even the loopholes that allowed the Kremlin to keep profiting are now being closed by Ukrainian drone strikes. With one precision raid, the security service and armed forces of Ukraine effectively switched off a vital valve through which Putin's regime had been pumping blood-soaked oil dollars into its treasury. Russia has now lost millions of tons of export supply. Fuel intended for allies or the black market, now reduced to ash in the port. In one lightning strike, Ukraine's defense forces have brought Russia's economy to its knees, proving that no shadow fleet will save the aggressor from just retribution. At the same time as Ukraine struck Ust-Luga, the city of Saint Petersburg itself, Russia's northern capital and Putin's hometown, felt a real aerial threat for the first time since the start of the war. Following drone attacks in the Leningrad region and directly over St. Petersburg, air raid sirens were declared, and the city's main airport, Pulkovo, was urgently shut down. From 2 p.m. on August 23rd, Rosaviatsia suspended all arrivals and departures to ensure flight safety, only reopening the airspace the next morning. For nearly 20 hours, St. Petersburg was cut off from the skies. Flights were massively delayed or canceled. According to Russian sources, at least 77 flights were postponed and 14 canceled altogether, while dozens of planes were diverted to reserve airfields. Panic swept the city. Authorities deliberately slowed mobile internet and communications to prevent drones from being guided, while residents complained en masse about outages. Reports indicated that between 4 and 20 Ukrainian drones were shot down over the Leningrad region that day, including one directly above St. Petersburg itself. For the first time in history, the city received an official emergency alert from Russia's Ministry of Emergency Situations warning of an air attack. In effect, the war that the Kremlin unleashed had arrived on its own doorstep. Russian air defenses scrambled in panic to down Ukrainian drones above a city of 2 million, while thousands of frightened passengers were forced into shelters at the airport, listening to the echoes of explosions. Although Russian officials later boasted that they had repelled the attack and claimed no damage was done in the city, the reality was undeniable. Hours of paralyzed air traffic at Pulkovo and the deliberate shutdown of communications spoke for themselves. The enemy can no longer feel safe anywhere. This successful Ukrainian drone strike deep into Russian territory was both symbolic and historic. It demonstrated the technical skill and audacity of Ukraine's defense forces, capable of reaching targets hundreds of kilometers from the front. The blow to Ust-Luga and Saint Petersburg was a resounding slap in the face for Putin's regime, and at the same time, a righteous act of retribution for all his crimes. Thank you, friends, for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the latest events. This material was prepared by Hustler. See you soon.